What is good, internet? It is Spirit of Paradox here, and welcome back to another video. Today we are going to be doing the return of Ultimate Peter Parker in the Ultimate Universe explained. So if you guys did not know, Ultimate Spider-Man did die in the Ultimate Universe, and he did come back to life, and they did absolutely nothing with it. I mean, like, this moment went completely under the radar for so many people. They didn't even know he came back. So, yes, he is back. And today we're going to explain how. Peter Parker would die in the death of Ultimate Spider-Man, where he would die fighting the Ultimate Sinister Six, in particularly Ultimate Green Goblin. Miles Morales would eventually take on the mantle of Spider-Man for a few years, and then Ultimate Peter Parker would pop up to be alive again. So you're probably wondering, how the hell does this all work exactly? In the next issue we see Ultimate Green Goblin heading to a secret lair, and then he reverts into his human form, going into a laboratory where he sees loads of vials of the Oz formula. Then after we see this, we skip over to Peter Parker and Miles, but that I'm not going to get to yet, because this is actually implying that it is the real Spider-Man, but it's the Oz formula is what brought him back to life. So what is the Oz formula, you're wondering? So the Oz formula was the super soldier serum attempt by Norman Osborn's company. They were the ones who injected the formula into the spider that bit Peter Parker, and the other one that bit Miles. It is also the same formula that Norman Osborn injected into himself, creating Ultimate Green Goblin. But that's not the kicker, because Ultimate Green Goblin, or Norman Osborn I should say, has been killed and has come back from the dead. In the Death of a Goblin storyline, I believe this is Ultimate Spider-Man issue 112 to 117, where Ultimate Green Goblin kills his son, Harry Osborn, who was Hobgoblin for a small period of time, finds out he kills his son. He reverts back into his human form and then asks someone to kill him. And then somebody gladly does and shoots him in the back of his head in his human form. This officially killed Norman Osborn, but he did come back to life for the event of Death of Ultimate Spider-Man, and I believe that was in issue 155, I believe. Don't quote me on that. So he was dead for quite a while until he could regenerate back from the dead. But what does this mean for Spider-Man though? Both Peter Parker and Miles were bitten by spiders that were injected with the Oz formula. So they will both be able to come back from the dead, but at a much slower rate compared to Norman Osborn. Both Peter Parker and Miles were injected with or bitten by spiders and had a much lower dose. Norman Osborn, I believe, took a few syringes to the chest back in the early days of Ultimate Spider-Man. Now you're probably wondering, when did Ultimate Peter Parker come back from the dead? So let's explain that story right now. In the ending of issue number 1 of Ultimate Spider-Man Miles Morales, or vice versa, and the beginning of issue number 2, we see Ultimate Peter Parker in Miles Morales' apartment looking for his old gear. And this was quite a surprise for Miles, and quite a surprise for anyone who read this. And in the beginning of the next issue, we basically see the Norman Osborn implication in the beginning, hinting towards that the Oz formula is the reason of why he came back to life. We go back into Miles' apartment, and Miles is just shocked and just frozen that Peter Parker is alive again. And Peter starts asking him questions like, can I have my old web shooters back? And then Miles starts touching his face, wondering if he's a hallucination or not. And then Peter's basically reacting to that like, bro, those gloves need to be washed. And then Peter asks him like, can you hear me? And he actually understands why Miles is shocked, and he's like, I'll wait, cool. And then Miles just blurts out his reaction, and he's like, what the F? And Peter's like, yeah, there it is. No, what the F? And then Peter's like, language. And Miles is basically like, the fuck you mean language? You're alive. And Peter's like, I don't want to get into all of that. I just want to get my stuff so I can go. And Miles is like, why don't you want to get into it? Does your Aunt May know? And then Peter just reluctantly says like, no. And no offense, that's none of your business. And Miles is like, none of my business? No one asked you to what? Be Spider-Man? And Peter's like, exactly. So I'm going to be real. The relationship between Miles and Ultimate Peter Parker is very different compared to how it is with Miles and 616 Peter Parker. I guess Peter Parker from the Ultimate Universe just don't like Miles either. I'm kind of in that boat, I'm not gonna lie. And then Miles basically responds to him and he's like, yo, almost everyone you've ever known asked me to be Spider-Man, and we just had a memorial for you, man, at my house. Yeah, I saw. And then Miles is shocked and he was like, wait, you were there? From a distance. And I can't lie, why is Peter being a dick to Miles? Like everyone's a dick to each other. Everyone's a dick to Bruce. Captain America was a dick to Peter, and now Peter's being a dick to Miles. And it's like, yo, everyone's got to be a dick to somebody in this universe. But carrying on. Miles starts asking questions like, are you from a different Earth or a different dimension? And he's like, I have no idea what you're talking about. And then Miles is basically explaining to him, like, I met a different Peter Parker from a different Earth. That is the event of Spider-Man 1. If you guys do not know, that is when 616 Peter Parker went to the Ultimate Universe and met Miles. And he's basically talking about that, and this Peter Parker has nothing to do with that either. Peter is like, I don't even know what you're talking about at this point. Listen, I'm sorry I came here when you were here. I'm sorry I freaked you out. Just give me my webs and I'll leave you alone. And Miles is like, yo, and you're not going to tell your Aunt May you're alive? And Peter just looks all emo and says like, you don't understand. Miles is like, I don't understand. And he's like, dude, I can't put her through all of this. Eventually she's just going to kneel over and die from all of this. I can't. And Miles is like, you have to tell her, bro. And then Peter's basically like, can I have my web shooters back? And then Miles is like, yo, she gave them to me because she thought you died. And Peter's like, I did, okay? What does that mean? Miles responds. Peter gets angry and he's like, hey, I don't know you, kid. I didn't ask for you to pick up the mantle or whatever. I'm sorry if this isn't up to your standards of how you think I should do these impossible things no one in the world outside of Captain America could ever deal with, but... And then Miles is like, either you tell her or I'm going to tell her, and he just interrupts him like that. Peter gets in Miles's face and he's like this, I just want to let you know I was trying everything I could to avoid getting weird with you. And then Miles is like, step back. Peter's like, last chance. Miles responds with, just sit down and talk to me. Peter grabs Miles's wrist and he's like, this isn't about you. And then you see Miles's ability, his Venom Blast starts going off, while Peter says, you're just a kid. And Miles tells him to stop, and Peter's like, what did you just do? And then in the next page, Peter gets zapped by Miles Morales' Venom Blast, basically. And he's like, wow, and ow. And Miles tells him, like, yo, hey man, just settle down. Peter responds with, like, how did you do that? Venom Blast. Sorry, relax. yeah, I wouldn't relax after that, bro. And Peter's basically like, yo, I don't even have Venom Blast. You got bit by one of those Osborn genetically altered spiders too, right? And then Miles is like, yeah, but how come you get a cool Venom Blast and I don't? Miles responds with, like, I think we got bitten by two different types of spiders. And then Peter's like, yeah, that makes sense. And then he gets up and he just throws Miles into one of the drawers, fam. I can't lie, it looked like Peter threw him into those drawers pretty hard. And then Miles is trying to get up, but before he could, Peter is like this, yo, remember I asked you nicely like 100 times? And then it looks like he just straight up knocks Miles out. And then Miles wakes up some time later. It doesn't even say how long he was out for. And then he says something, and I have no idea what that says. Maybe it's Spanish. Someone who speaks Spanish, let me know what that means. And then Miles is like, ow. And then he realizes Peter's taking his web shooters. And he's like, Peter's alive? And then he starts thinking to himself, how could he be alive? And then he comes to the conclusion that he's a clone. more than likely I don't think this guy is a clone. Like, I think this is actually Peter Parker. But he starts shouting out clone, 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 and then he puts on his suit and then he jumps out the window. Ultimate Green Goblin would eventually come across Miles and fight him. And I must say, Miles Morales does a pretty good job in holding off Green Goblin. He puts in a good few punches and kicks, but everything just starts to get on fire, and eventually Green Goblin is a little too much for Miles to handle. As somebody in the distance is watching, they realize that Miles is having difficulty fighting him, and then we eventually see the reveal of Peter Parker fully dressed in his Spider-Man outfit, and everybody is shocked to see him alive again. Everyone is basically shocked, even Ultimate Green Goblin. He's wondering, how are you even alive? How is this possible? And so on and so forth. In his rage, he just goes up and tries to kill both of them, and that just doesn't seem to work. They both manage to take down Ultimate Green Goblin for a moment, and then Miles zaps him with his Venom Blast, which seems to have done a lot of damage to him. Green Goblin retreats, but everyone on the news channel can see that Peter Parker is alive as Spider-Man, and Aunt May is in tears from seeing him, and he is wondering, is Peter Parker alive? Next we go to Jane Jonah Jameson's apartment, and when he's on the phone to somebody, and we could see a ball of fire through his window coming closer and closer, and then we find out it's Ultimate Green Goblin who's come to see him. Green Goblin reverts to his human form, and then we see Norman Osborn say, "Sorry to barge in, Jameson. Do you have a moment?" Right, you're probably wondering, why are we talking about Jane Jonah Jameson and Norman Osborn having a conversation? Right, this is very important. So Norman Osborn basically spills the beans about everything in this conversation. So check this out. So Jane Jonah Jameson asks him, "Are we on the record?" Norman responds with like, "You know we both are." And he basically, Jonah Jameson basically asks him like, "Do you need a robe?" Because it's like, yo, brother, you're naked. But Norman basically explains, since he's become Green Goblin, he doesn't get cold. But if it will make him feel more comfortable, he'll gladly wear one. So Jonah puts the recorder on the table, and this is where the conversation gets really, really important. Jonah would ask, "Where have you been?" "In SHIELD custody, but you knew that. And why are you here?" "People think I'm a monster because you've murdered Peter Parker. And yet I'm still alive. Why not him too? The Oz formula that made Spider-Man made me into what I am. It made the new Spider-Man. My greatest achievement, I created the Spider-Man. It may be that we cannot die. This needs to be examined." I must say, with all respect, you sound lucid. More so than we're led to believe that you are capable of. You know, the young new Spider-Man has a power, a sting, a jolt. He jabbed me tonight and it sent a current through me, and I seem more like I feel like my old self suddenly. I should thank him. My chemicals seem a bit more balanced. I feel like my old self, and I remember every horrible thing I've ever done. My boy. Your boy? Norman starts crying and he says, "I killed my boy." And that was the reference to the death of the Goblin story. Norman starts to break down and he says, "They made me a monster. They made me a killer." They? I created Spider-Man. Me. I created the formula that could bring a world revolution, and they ruined me for it. SHIELD, Fury, Roxxon, Hydra. That's why I need to destroy them. That's why I need to take power, because those in power took everything from me. So, you're not done fighting? Not until every last one of them burns by my... And then we see Norman's eyes just go wide open like a deer. And then we see Jane Jonah Jameson pull out the gun with nothing to say, no hesitation, and just loads bullets into Norman. Like, not like the moment he said like, "What, you're not done fighting?" Like Jane, Joe, and Jameson knew like, yo, big man, you've got to go, bro. You're fucking crazy. After shooting Osborn, Jonah starts to panic and wonders what has he done. He calls up someone to see if he can get any help with the situation, but that doesn't really seem to go his way. Norman Osborn seems to get up and starts getting closer and closer to Jaina. And the worst about this situation, he tried to say it was self-defense. Norman finally gets up behind him and tells him, "I was telling you about my immortality. I invented the formula that created Spider-Man, that created me. But a side effect, an unknown tested effect on my genius, is now I am immortal. I cannot be killed." Someone's saying hello on the phone, and Jonah's like, "What do you want from me?" "I wanted an impartial newsman's eye to tell my story. I am creating the new gods, but I was wrong to come here." And then Jonah says, "I shot you dead." And then Norman finally responds with, "And I'm telling you, mortal to immortal." And this is when we get the death of Jane Jonah Jameson in the Ultimate Universe. Man, that is actually peak. Like, he just got his head fried and left the phone ringing and everything. Whew. Now back to Peter Parker. We're in Queens, New York, and we see Miles Morales knocking at a door and then Mary Jane answering it. And then he says, "Is he here?" And Peter says, "Let him in. He deserves answers." Miles is basically like, "Hello," and Peter is in the room looking a bit injured from the fight with Green Goblin, and he says, "Just give me a minute, Miles." And Miles is like, "No man, no more minutes, no more vague. Are you Peter Parker or not?" And Mary Jane basically is trying to reinforce the fact that this is Peter Parker. Do not worry, people, it is. But Miles has his doubts, and he's like, "No offense, MJ, I want to hear it from him." And then Peter finally responds with, "I'm not sure I want to do this with her in the room." And this her is a police agent or police detective. And I believe this is Maria Hill. Oh, it is Maria Hill. And she is here basically guarding them from any badness that's possibly coming their way, because they did have a fight with Ultimate Greek Goblin prior to this. She asks him, "How are you alive, Peter Parker? And are you Peter Parker?" He says, "I am." And then Miles says like, "Yo man, how are you alive?" "I don't know." "How do you know you're you then?" "How do I know I'm me?" "Maybe someone cloned you." And then Mary Jane's like, "It's him." "MJ, he has been dead and now he's alive. Stop acting like I'm the one asking crazy questions. You should be asking these questions." And then Peter is basically like, "If I was cloned or something, would I remember like my whole life? Would I remember all of it, or just some of it, or maybe none of it?" And Miles asks him, "What do you remember?" And then Peter says, "That's the thing. I remember everything." He remembers the time from when he was a child to his early days as Spider-Man, Venom, the Ultimate Sinister Six. Actually, in the Ultimate Universe, they're called the Ultimate Six. So when I say the Ultimate Six, I mean the Sinister Six. He remembers kissing Mary Jane, Black Woman, his encounter with the Hulk, and so on and so forth. And he remembers everything, even up to when he died. And then he says he woke up in darkness in an abandoned laboratory. He says, "I woke up, the entire thing was abandoned, and just like everyone ran out or got up and ran." And then someone asked him, "Was it Roxxon? Was it S.H.I.E.L.D.? Oscorp?" For a second I thought I was at the end of the world and I was the only survivor. There was no way to tell. All the computers were wiped, all the data pulled or deleted. I had no idea how I got from being dead to here," he says. "And all I knew, I was somewhere outside of Atlanta, and I had a load of buses and trucks to stow away on top of before I could get back to New York." Peter continues, "I had to get back to Queens." And then we see Mary Jane walking by, and then she looked shocked to see that Peter Parker was alive and he was hiding in some bushes. But he says, but immediately I saw the huge mistake it was. It was mean. It was selfish. In the next page we see Peter Parker's gravesite and there's no body in there. And then the monologue continues. But once the two of us, calmed down, we went to my gravesite and dug up the coffin. And our words, as were sure as I would never say aloud, it was empty. Peter would continue and say, so I'm me as far as I know. I mean, we should have known the mad science that made me, that made you, that made this world so crazy. We should have known someone would just decide my body was a genetic wonderland and just take it. How am I alive? How was Osborn alive? Maybe I didn't die. Maybe someone zapped me awake Frankenstein style. But after what I did to MJ coming here, I knew I couldn't, I knew I needed to leave all this behind. Just get out of here and leave this place. And especially with you out there, it's not like I'm needed. I just needed my web shooters. They are the only connection to my dad that I have. The webs were a formula my dad started that I finished. It means the world to me, you know. I was going to just leave and figure out what I was supposed to do next. But then Norman Osborn, that damn Norman Osborn, he shows his face on my front lawn and I just couldn't let it go. But your Aunt May, Gwen Stacy, I couldn't just waltz back into my Aunt May's life. I couldn't be Spider-Man again. I hurt these people. I've tortured them. This is impossible tragedy, and me being alive doesn't make it any better. I didn't mean to bring this onto anyone. I know, but being Spider-Man has brought nothing but tears and horror to the people who deserve anything but. MJ told me you all had real closure about me. You're lucky. Not everybody gets that. May's moved on. It's not fair to do this to her again. It's not fair. It's not your call, Peter. I knew it was you. And then we see Aunt May. And she just looks at him, right? And she just walks straight up to him. And he looks like, oh shit, I'm about to get a beating. But no. She grabs onto it, looks at him in the face, and then gives him a hug. And then you see Gwen do the same thing right afterwards. Aunt May and Gwen Stacy both get to reunite with Peter Parker once again, and it is a very nice moment in this book, I can't lie. But unfortunately it gets cut short because Ultimate Green Goblin has found their location and he is ready to kick some ass because he is pissed. He's just been killed, come back from the dead, and then he finds out the very people he hates the most are also immortal, and now he's here to beat some sense into them and get his ass handed to him again. So Norman's outside with a ball of fire with him, and he's like, now it is time for us all to come to terms with our past and future, my Spider-Man. Like, I can't lie, he looks like the devil here. So Maria Hill's like, Norman Osborn, I am NYPD. You will cease all illegal genetic activity and power down immediately. It started shooting him, like that's gonna do anything. But Miles is like, get them out of here, I have this. And Peter's like, no, this is my fight. No, they are your responsibility. And then Miles just jumps into action screaming, I got this. Both of the Spider-Men would engage in the fight with Ultimate Green Goblin, and I have got to say, Bendis did a very good job when it comes down to writing the story, and the artwork here is phenomenal. They really made Ultimate Green Goblin a true badass villain in this story. Like, even though he's always getting his ass kicked, like, he is a dominable force, bro, and he is someone not to be trifled with. He's basically like a Hulk with fireballs. But they both take him down, and Maria Hill, shoots him in the back of the head in his human form, hoping that he is dead, but we all know he's not, and he will eventually come back to life. Peter and Miles bring everyone to safety on top of an abandoned warehouse, and they see the ruins from afar. And everyone's quite surprised. Miles says, "Wow, is Osborn dead?" And Peter says, "Yeah, I guess we're not so immortal after all." And Miles explains how he really hated him, and Peter would respond with, imagine how he feels. Gwen also states how much he hates Norman Osborn, and Miles also would respond to that with, imagine how he feels. And Peter says, "I would really never have to go through this night like this again. I'm not built for it. Never was," Aunt May says. "I know, Aunt May. And that's why I'm leaving." And Aunt May would respond with, "Excuse me?" Peter explains to Miles, "Hey, I know you don't need my approval, but you earned these. These are yours, kids. No backs." Miles responds, "Are you serious?" And Peter will respond with, "I was wrong to try and take them away from you. Totally wrong." "What are you going to do?" he says. "I'll be back one day." "Hold on just a second. You're leaving? The hell you are?" Peter would say, "Let me figure out what has happened to me, what I am, and what I am here for." Aunt May would say, "We'll do it together." And Peter would say, "No, you're not built for this. Your words, but I love you so much, but I can't take another chance at what almost happened tonight and happening again. But you be Spider-Man. My blessing. It's all yours," he says to Miles. And Miles is happy. Look, Miles is all excited. It's like, "Yay, I got approval from both Spider-Men. I'm truly Spider-Man." Yeah, I guess that is truly the case. So yes, people, Peter Parker is alive and well in the Ultimate Universe. But this ain't the ending. This ain't the ending. We got one more page to go through. Check this out. Next we go elsewhere, and we see Mary Jane with Peter Parker, and she asks him, "How did it go with Aunt May? A 5-hour guilt trip lecture? It is what it is. But they bought it. Yeah, I guess." And then you see Mary Jane say, "You wasn't supposed to put the costume on and dance in front of the cameras. Lots of things happened that wasn't supposed to happen, MJ. But I'm still here, and you're still here." And then they start to kiss. And then Mary Jane asks, I get you back? I get you back. That's all that matters. Everything else is just, I don't have my web shooters anymore, so I can't swing off into the sunset." Oh, that's really sweet. "I can't swing off into the sunshine. But I have my mum's car. And yeah, it works too. Where are we going? Last place anyone would ever look for us." And then he drives off into the sunset with Mary Jane. So, people, that is where Peter Parker is in the Ultimate Universe. So yes, he is alive and well. In fact, we see him again in the ending of Spider-Man 2 with the Ultimates beating the crap out of Ultimate Green Goblin. But the question is, people, will we see Ultimate Peter Parker as Spider-Man again in Ultimate Invasion? Well, I would personally say that would be one of the biggest missed opportunities in comic book history. If you are going to bring the Ultimate Universe back, you're not going to bring back the most beloved character from it? Of course you wouldn't. Or of course they would. So I really do think that Ultimate Spider-Man will appear in Ultimate Invasion later in the year. But we just have to wait and see. And I understand there's a lot going on with Marvel and the merging and stuff, but I have faith we'll get a really good comic with Ultimate Invasion. And I have a feeling we'll get to see Ultimate Spider-Man once more. But let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Did you know that Ultimate Peter Parker came back from the dead? And how do you feel about it now? And what are your feelings towards the character in the future of the possible Ultimate Universe revival? Do you think we'll see him again? You know what to do in the comments. If you guys enjoy the content lately, I'm uploading lots of Ultimate Universe content. If you guys are fans of the Ultimate Universe, this is the channel you want to be on. I'm going to be uploading multiple bits of Ultimate Universe content as a lead up to the upcoming event Ultimate Invasion that comes out this June. And I will damn well sure be covering that story when it releases issue by issue. But thank you very much for watching this video, and thank you for your continued support, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.